Welcome back to our KELOLAND News Special Report, Coronavirus Town Hall.
We are asking South Dakota's congressional delegation your questions. Our next question comes from Kevin.
My question is about beef prices. Before the COVID-19 outbreak, beef prices were pretty steady, but now they've gone up a little bit at the local grocery stores. Yet our ranchers in South Dakota are getting about $450 less per critter than at the sale barn than they used to get. So my ultimate question is, who's getting this $450 now that the ranchers aren't getting it?
Customers paying more, ranchers getting paid less. Senator or Congressman Johnson, let's start with you for this question.
Well, this is absolutely a problem. Frankly, prices were not great before COVID-19, but they've gotten a lot worse. And the specific question is, who's getting that money? Well, it's the packer in the middle. And the reality is we do not have enough capacity in the middle and the processing stage, and we don't have enough competition in that space. We've got 4 major packers who control 85% of the market, and it's a tight capacity environment. That means anytime we have any kind of a disruption, like we had a fire at the Holcomb facility in Kansas a few months ago, we saw the exact same thing happen, where the folks who are selling it on the hoof, our ranchers, were getting even worse prices, and the folks at the supermarket were having to pay more. There's a lot that we can do to evaluate this. One of the things I've done is ask the president to bring all these players together, the Department of Justice, USDA, Packers and Stockyards Division, bringing the Commodities Future Trading Commission. Let's bring everybody together to really look at what's going on in this marketplace and see if we can't find some improvements.
Well, Kevin isn't the only one wondering about these issues. We received a similar question from Ray, who says beef prices are at an all-time high, but ranches are barely able to maintain expenses. Some are going bankrupt. He wants to know how you're going to correct this and how long it's going to take. He also says that he hasn't seen anything from the USDA, even though it was promised in March. Senator Thune.
Right, Don. And they did make commitments, and those commitments were based upon funding that we got included in the CARES package. Mike and Dusty and I and some others from our part of the world fought hard to get funding included in the CARES package that was specifically for livestock producers. That program they've been working on shaping it at USDA. They will be hopefully getting those payments out. Sign-up will start here soon. Hopefully the payments will go out in late May or early June. And it will probably be on a per animal basis based upon the loss that they've incurred going back to the first of the year. So that should be coming through the pipeline. It will help in the near term. It probably won't be enough. But the longer term structural issues in this industry, and Dusty alluded to it earlier, has to do with the supply chain. And you know, you got the producer whose prices have been in the tank both before COVID, but they've been in a downward spiral ever since COVID. And then you've got the middleman, the processor, the packer, you got the retailer, and the consumer on the end keeps paying more. If you go to the supermarket today, the grocery store today, beef prices, other types of protein prices keep going up at a time when prices for the producer are going down. And so that's got to be investigated. We've asked to have that investigated. We've asked the Department of Justice to investigate it. USDA has committed to investigate it. But we got to get to the bottom of this. The producers out there deserve an explanation for what's happening and why is there this huge disparity between the price that they're receiving and the price the consumer's having to pay.
Yeah, hopefully we'll get some answers on that. Senator Rounds Linda has another question along those same lines. She says that the coronavirus has brought to light a meat industry monopoly. She wants to know what type of legislation you plan to introduce to help the family farmer.
Yeah, it's a really good question because we're right in the middle of this thing, and this has just highlighted what's going on. To begin with, Dusty was right. There's about 85% of the market, which is controlled by 4 packers. I asked, put together a letter for the Department of Justice back in March, asked them to actually investigate this and find out whether or not the packers were manipulating the market, allegedly. But nonetheless, clearly, when you're underwater, when producers are losing about $400 to $450 a head, and packers are making a gross profit of over $1,600 a head, and you got a choke point right there, there's something wrong. So here's the kind of stuff that we've started with, and there's a series of them. We've asked the Justice Department to investigate, based on antitrust, whether or not they're in violation of antitrust. If they're not in violation of antitrust, then we got to fix the laws because clearly the market's not working. Number 2, mandatory country of origin label. Senator Tester has agreed with me. We've introduced legislation. Senator Tester's legislation we strengthened. He had originally asked for a sense of the Senate. I asked that it be a resolution to be attached to the next COVID response bill, and that if we get it in there for mandatory country of origin labeling to be negotiated by our trade representative, if we can put that into a resolution and have the president sign it, that gives us a heck of a lot of bargaining to be able to get that into our trade deals and not have tariffs imposed on our corn growers and our soybean producers. Along with that, we've also gone back in and with Senator Grassley, we have asked that we do transparency in pricing on livestock. Right now, only 25% of the livestock is actually being bought on a cash basis. We put in legislation that basically would say it's going to be 50% on at least a weekly basis, to where they'd have to buy it on the open market to establish price, rather than working through formulas or buying it through another way. That would give us price transparency, and it's another step. The other thing that we've really got to work on is right now there's not enough competition in the industry today. We've got beef processors, small beef processors that are state licensed, and those state licensed beef processors, they can only sell within their own state. So somebody by Sioux Falls can't sell into Minnesota, but they can sell all the way out in Lemon, South Dakota. That's wrong. And the only reason why that is because they have to run through the same licensing, and they've got to be just as much quality in their processing as a federally licensed program. But for some reason, they don't want that competition, and that's wrong. And the last thing on it is this. Did you know that our Department of Ag right now in the United States says it's okay for a packer to bring in foreign beef that was born outside the United States, fed outside the United States, processed outside of the United States. They can ship it in frozen, unbox it, repackage it, and since it's repackaged, call it product of the USA and put a label on it. That is wrong, and that is false advertising. We've got a bill for the third year in a row now. We've got a bill in that would actually require the Department of Ag to make sure that it is born in the U.S., fed in the U.S., and processed in the U.S. if you're going to use that voluntary labeling process. We think it's worthwhile pursuing.
Yeah, good information. This question now is from Dave. He wants to know why pork exports to China are now up 35% when grocery stores have minimal product and the price is up. Let's start with Senator Thune.
Well, I mean, China did agree to buy a lot more of our agricultural products, which is a good thing. And we hope they follow through. The phase one of the trade deal that was negotiated by the president and his team earlier this year, China agreed to make significantly more in terms of volume purchases from the United States. So, that helps open up markets. Hopefully that creates demand for our products and pushes the prices up. What obviously we don't want to see happen is we don't have a shortage in this country. And right now we have serious concerns about the food supply chain and its security, which is why some of the things that Mike was talking about earlier in terms of country of origin labeling and ensuring that the things that, that are born, raised, and slaughtered in the United States are labeled accordingly and that we know where our meats are coming from is really critical. But if we have supply problems in this country today, we need to make sure that we're supplying the United States first, the supermarkets, the grocery stores that our consumers here in this country are going to right now. We're finding shortages. Part of that's attributable, as we said earlier, some of the processing capacity. But long term, we need more markets for our agricultural products, whether those be crops or livestock. We've got to get more folks out there buying American-made products.
Well, our next question comes from Kevin, and this one's a video question. Let's take a look.
Due to the COVID-19, I've had my hours cut by 25%. I've tried to apply for unemployment to get the Weekly Care Act benefits, but South Dakota Unemployment keeps rejecting me with no option to appeal. We have other workers from the same company working in other states, and they are getting their Weekly Care Act benefits just fine. Can you make temporary adjustments on South Dakota unemployment so I am not denied this relief?
Kevin's one of several viewers who say that they've had their hours cut and haven't been able to get help. What programs are available for them, and where can they turn for help? Congressman Johnson.
Well, clearly unemployment insurance is the standard program people would look to. Every state gets to set their own unemployment insurance rules. And in general, I think that's the right thing. When I look around my colleagues in DC, there are a lot of good people, but I don't want them making every decision of importance in this country. There is a role for state governments and their leadership, 50 laboratories of democracy, all doing things a little different. There is time. We need a strong central government as well. This is why it's so important that we get an economy that is humming back along as well as it was just a few months ago. It's not going to happen overnight, and we don't want to do it recklessly. But we just got done with the longest period of economic expansion in human history. I mean, real wages were growing quarter after quarter after quarter. And so I feel terribly for him. If something changes in his circumstance, if he gets his hours cut a little bit more, he will be eligible for South Dakota unemployment. I know in Congress, we're going to be talking about, just as Senator Thune said, people who really need help. Maybe they've fallen through the cracks. We've got a lot of programs that we've rolled out, $3 trillion worth of programs. We want to make sure that we're not spending any money we don't have to, because at some point it's all borrowed money. But we do want to make sure for people like your viewer, if they're falling through the cracks, we're having conversations about if there's anything we should be doing.
Our next question comes from Vicky. She wants to know your plan beyond the extended unemployment already implemented for helping all of the people who have lost their jobs as we move forward through this crisis in the next 6 to 12 months. She wants to know how you're going to help them feed their families and pay their rent.
Senator Ross?
Yeah, thanks. And look, this is the concern that we talk about on a regular basis, which is for those individuals that have no place else to go. How did they find themselves in this place to begin with, through no fault of their own? Number one, if they're a small company, if they're from a small company and the small company laid them off, that's exactly what the PPP, the Payroll Protection Plan, was designed to do. It was set up so that those small businesses did not have to terminate those employees. And the second part on it is if that wasn't where she was at, if she wasn't in one of those small employers, if she was in a larger employer and they were laid off, there's actually a $500 billion fund, which is outstanding right now, which is for those medium to larger sized employers. Once again, the idea here is that they could take the money and maintain those employees. And by the way, the larger companies would have to pay that money back if they took that loan. So I'm assuming in this particular case that this lady may very well have been with a larger company who had decided to lay people off. The unemployment benefits probably would have been her best bet to begin with. And there was an extra $600 per week added onto the top of that for a period of 13 weeks. That'll run all the way up through until June 1st or until June 30th. If she is still unemployed after that time, what we believe will happen is that there will be a replacement for this, but probably not as intense or as big as what we've already got. A lot of it's going to depend on what the economy is actually doing, the number of people that are filing for unemployment, and the number of businesses that are actually going back into business. I think we're going to end up with some sort of a transition program for them. The PPP is probably the best example of one that can be transitioned over. But for those individuals that are on unemployment right now and that have no place else to go, I do not believe that the unemployment is going to run out. But I do not also believe that you will have the extra $600 per week added in, because what that did do was make it more difficult for employers to pull people back to work. Mm-hmm. Because when you add another $2,400 per month to what they're getting through unemployment, a lot of those employers couldn't afford to hire those people back. So she's finding herself in a challenge where she's saying, what do I do after June 30th? And right now, what our best bet is there will be a transition period. But what we really want is for those businesses to be able to afford to bring people back online, get this economy rolling again, get the benefits back in place for these individuals, and get that stability back in, which most of these employees really want.
Yeah, we've heard a lot of cases like that.
Mm-hmm. And from that stimulus money to federal spending, we do have a lot more still to talk about.
We will be asking the delegation more of your questions when we come back.